Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everybody, and welcome to this STARS webinar session. I'm Tony Schönenberger, I'm the Executive Chairman of STARS. STARS is a global platform for dialogue to discuss developments which will impact our society as a whole, and particularly our businesses in the next couple of years. Today, we are continuing the webinar series on sustainability and particularly also on the circular economy. In this context, I believe education plays a most crucial role. Education for children, obviously, but also education of students and adults. So today we have the great privilege to talk to Tensie WHELAN. Tensie is Clinical Professor for Business and Society and Director of the Center for Sustainable Business at the New York University Stern School of Business. Tensie, thank you very much for joining this webinar session. We are very much looking forward to your insights and learning from you. At this time, I want to thank and introduce you now to Gordana Kierans. Gordana is a former professor of international business. She is now managing partner of her consulting company in Croatia. One focus of her important work is circular economy. In addition, I should also mention that Gordana is also president of the STARS Southeast Europe alumni chapter. Gordana designed this important series of total 7 webinars on sustainability and the circular economy. And she's also moderating these webinars. So Gordana, again, thank you very much. And the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Tony. Pleasure being here. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning if you have audience from United States. And a true pleasure talking to Professor Tensie WHELAN today. I have been following her work for a while, and I'm really looking forward to our conversation. Tensie, a warm welcome from me too.
It's a pleasure to be here. Sorry, I had to unmute myself. Glad to join you.
My first question is around your previous role. But before I ask you the question, I would like to invite our audience to ask questions as well. As you know, you are invited to use the Q&A function, and I will have the window open here in front of me. So when you do ask your question, I will see it and read it to Tensie. So please feel free. And I will start with the first one. Looking back at your incredible career, especially your role as a Rainforest Alliance Director that you brought to an internationally recognized and incredible brand. After that, you switched to the New York University Stern School of Business, the Center for Sustainable Business. What motivated you to switch?
I would say a couple of things. First of all, again, thank you for inviting me to speak today. I'm looking forward to the conversation. So, I think one element was I was interested in doing more research and writing. I had been a journalist years prior, and I missed that and running a big international organization. The only thing I got to write was memos, so I was missing that. It had been 15 years and I was looking for what I wanted to do next. I had done some guest lecturing at NYU and enjoyed that. NYU was also my alma mater, undergraduate. And I also like working with young people, and at the Rainforest Alliance, I had a lot of young people that worked for me and that I mentored, and I enjoyed that work. So when they reached out to recruit me to come and be a professor there, I thought about it and I said, yes, I really would enjoy teaching and working with students, but also I said, I'm an entrepreneur. I like to build organizations and have impact. So if I come, I also want to set up a Center for Sustainable Business and set up, programs for students and research because they had none of that. And I said, I'll raise the funds for it. And so they said, okay, so here I am.
Oh, that's wonderful. So you set up the Center for Sustainable Business.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
That's great. How much, since you became professor, looking back, how much has the education changed in terms of embedding sustainability into business studies?
Yeah.
What do you
Yeah,
think?
so when I first came, one of the things that I did was look at sort of the competition and, in order to make my persuasive arguments about what needed to be done. So even at that time, which was 8 years ago, the top 10 business schools in the States, 8 of them had sustainability, kind of some type of sustainability presence. But what I have seen over the last 8 to 10 years is much more adoption, centers for sustainable business in virtually all schools, um, more and more mainstreaming sustainability into core courses as well as electives. Although still, and this is one of the weaknesses, most of it is still off to the side as electives. And I would say as well, more urgency, recognition that things like climate change are here, as opposed to 8 years ago, it was sort of around the corner, even though those of us active knew it wasn't. It was seen more that way by business, and now business knows it's here. I would also say that the pandemic really helped shine a light on some of the challenges around global supply chains and traceability, and also resiliency related to sustainability. And I think that also has shifted mindsets in business education as well.
Yeah, the also regulatory framework is now kicking in more and more in Europe and United States.
Very good point.
Yeah, especially. But I'm still skeptical, especially being a professor in China, working in Southeast Asia as a consultant and trainer in the Middle East. Are we doing enough? Still kind of that question. You mentioned electives, but there is another background information why I'm asking you this question. While in Brussels in 2016, 8 years ago, I worked for a global network of universities and multinationals. And back then, the former CEO of Unilever gathered together the deans of top European business schools and universities to tell them that they are not doing enough to prepare graduates for this VUCA future ahead of us. So what is your observation? Have in the last 8 years, have we done enough? Or is there still a lot of work ahead of us?
There's still a lot of work ahead of us, unfortunately. I think universities move slowly when in fact they should be able to move quickly. They need to be nimble, but they're not, for a variety of reasons, ranging from sort of bureaucracy, tenure, a whole series of financial challenges as well, for many universities. So I think being able to turn on a dime is not what universities can do, and that's a challenge when you've got such a fast-moving set of issues that business has to deal with. I would also say that because of tenure, we have professors in universities who are happy teaching what they were teaching 30 years ago and see no reason to change.
Yes.
And don't believe in this new stuff, so you also have that as a barrier. In teaching and changing up core courses to incorporate more sustainability, because core courses are so many, right? You have a lot of adjuncts, a lot of professors, and they all get, and understandably, flexibility to teach how they want to teach. But because of that, you can't just educate one professor to change like sustainability in a core course. You have to somehow get them all on board.
Yes.
So, there's a whole series of challenges around it. In terms of, going to the positive side of the question, like what do we need business schools to be teaching students? I think obviously there's the basic information. You need to understand how to define what is material from an ESG perspective for a given industry. You need to understand how to talk to stakeholders. You need to understand how to prioritize. You need to understand what the kind of trends are where you can create competitive advantage from investing in sustainability, et cetera. So there's that kind of strategic understanding, because for me, sustainability is about embedding it into core business strategy at a practitioner level. And so you need to kind of really be able to think that through and understand how to do that. But in addition, anybody active in sustainability, generally in companies, they have to do this all. They have an enormous responsibility and very little authority. So therefore, they have to be taught a lot of soft skills. How do you find win-win solutions for internal and external stakeholders, right? How do you manage for a situation where people are, kind of like matrix organization and managing for a variety of different things and making sustainability everybody's job. You know, you need a whole series of kind of EQ type skills, as well as basic understanding of the kind of drivers behind sustainability for companies.
Yes, yes, absolutely. Also, how to pivot, because you mentioned earlier COVID. You know, it's an example of something that came our way that nobody expected, and this is with climate change. Of course, we'll see a lot of that ahead of us. You're also teaching MBA programs. I was in one of your webinars with one of the fireside chat with one of the keynote speakers, which was very interesting. How do you integrate that into your MBA studies? And how do you have a chance to make it interdisciplinary? Because this is one of the challenges. We in education work very much in silos. How can we reach over to other colleagues from other areas? And how is your MBA program teaching these concepts differently than other universities?
Yeah, so we have both MBAs and undergrads, and actually executive MBAs have a specialization in sustainable business and innovation that they can elect to take. There's a foundational course called Sustainability for Competitive Advantage that provides really kind of the strategy. It's a strategy course, the strategy underpinnings. And then, yes, we have multidisciplinary and experiential learning as part of that. So we'll have finance, accounting, economics, data analytics and operations, you know, supply chain, marketing. So we have courses in all of those that mostly also count towards cross-cutting credits towards a marketing specialization as well, because a number of students take more than one specialization. In addition to the curricular opportunities, we also offer experiential learning. So we have fellowships where we recruit companies for MBAs to work with over the summer. We have what we call Stern Signature projects, where MBAs will work over a course of a semester on a sustainability challenge with a particular client. We have a group called Empower Her, which is to help more female MBAs get into sustainable finance. And there we do mentoring and special kind of education and engagement. We have a jobs board and career development. We have mentorships and executive in residence with Stern alums who are active in the space, who will sit down with students and talk to them about their career aspirations. So there's a whole series of ways, because the biggest challenge for people getting these degrees is finding a pathway to a job. It isn't your traditional recruiting for management consulting or investment banking. You know, it's a lot less linear and clear. And so students, because they're taking on debt for their, you know, degrees, are worried about that. And so supporting them in that journey is a big part of what we do, in addition to the kind of actually getting experience.
Yeah, it's a very good point that you are mentioning for these students in different areas. And you mentioned ESGs, which are very much under pressure in the United States. Which leads me now to my next question about your articles. I have been reading your articles also for quite a time. You mentioned you were a journalist before. In your articles, based on your research, you argued that sustainability is profitable. I wholeheartedly agree to that, but would you mind elaborating for our STARS audience about data that supports that?
Yeah, I'd be glad to. Yeah, a big part of our research comes from when I was running Rainforest Alliance. I saw significant value creation, whether it was improved productivity and quality for the farmers and sort of increased income, to reduced insurance cost for the coffee traders, to brand benefits for the brands, right? So series of things that nobody was actually tracking. And so I got very interested in that. Did some work with the UN Global Compact on it when I was at Rainforest Alliance. And when I came to Stern, developed this methodology called ROSI, Return on Sustainability Investment, that has identified 9 mediating factors that drive better financial performance when you embed sustainability core to your business strategy. Those 9 mediating factors include things like innovation, operational efficiency, employee engagement and retention, risk mitigation, sales marketing benefits, and so on. any kind of good management can drive innovation and growth or operational efficiency, et cetera. But what we're seeing is that sustainability, like all these different sustainability strategies, can drive 3 or 4 of these mediating factors. And then you can actually get much more sophisticated about analyzing the returns. You're an expert in circular economy. As one example, in circular solutions, you're buying less virgin product, which saves you money because you're reusing the old stuff, and you're paying less for waste disposal costs, which is the ultimate in an operational inefficiency, right? But companies don't tend to see things that way. And also, unfortunately, what we find in doing this work is that the finance function doesn't actually track avoided cost. If you're not tracking avoided cost, which is a significant part of benefits related to sustainability, then you're not actually understanding or making good decisions related to your capital investments or even OpEx investments. So that's an area that we've got very interested in. We've been working in apparel, agriculture, pharma, healthcare, et cetera. We're starting to turn to work on hard to abate sectors like energy and real estate. And we do a lot of case studies with companies, to look at and monetize these examples. So just to, bring it to life for you, going back to the circular economy, we found for one automotive company that was reusing 2.5% of end-of-life car components, putting it back into new cars, and selling for recycling 10%, and then paying to dispose of the rest as they need to in Europe due to regulatory framework. That company was netting $100 million, which they did not know because they were treating it as a compliance issue and not tracking avoided cost, right? So that's a significant amount of money. So, there's really fascinating benefits to be had that currently are not recognized. And the final point I will make, on the ESG controversy is, I never liked the term ESG. ESG was, in the way it's used, ESG came out of the UN as a way to design a system of metrics to assess corporate progress or investor progress on sustainability commitments. Sustainability includes in its definition profitability. ESG is divorced from profitability, which is one of the reasons why you see all this kind of, that has nothing to do with fiduciary duty, right? And also we see boards and investors asking for ESG and asking for financials and not how the two relate, which again is a problem. So for me, ESG should really just be talking about, we're looking at these ESG metrics. When you're talking about strategy or investment strategy or business strategy, it should be about sustainability. So additional perspective.
I completely agree. About ESGs and sustainability. Sustainability became kind of a buzzword, fuzzy, but when we look at the core, it means to sustain itself, and of course, financially, no company can survive without being financially viable. This is right. Pure business. And secondly, of course, we have to look at the resources. If we continue packaging, won't make us sustainable because we are still using the core resources. Hence, so I do that, cover that a lot in my training. And you mentioned the circular economy, which leads us to the next question from the audience. I also dedicate a lot of work to that, and I completely agree with you. This question is so important. Is it more efficient to teach the sustainability, or more precisely the circular economy, as early as possible in education? Much earlier, before they get splitted in different faculties and universities. Circular understanding as a principle. Do you see an age where we should start, and what is the role of universities to push this? Rita, thank you for the question. I couldn't agree more.
When I was running Rainforest Alliance, we did kindergarten through 12th grade educational components for schools. And, while I wasn't developing those materials myself, I definitely oversaw what was being developed. And I think there are absolutely really important concepts to teach young children without it being pedantic or, lecturing or anything like that, but in an experiential way. And I think that circularity is a big part of that. I mean, I think, a big aha when I was a kid, doing Earth Days and things, we have this terminology where we say we're going to throw something away. You never think about that terminology, but like if as a kid, you start to ask someone, okay, what are you going to do with that piece of garbage? I'm going to throw it away. Where is away? And then, you had like, okay, well, where is away? Oh, actually, so and that there's no way, right? So then you can get into a circular kind of discussion in a kind of fun and interesting way. So, obviously it has to be directed towards the age you're dealing with. But I also saw over and over again, children come back to their families with like, we can't do this, we can't do that, mom and dad, because, I learned about this in school. So I do think it's really important. What is university's role? I mean, I think if you're a teaching college, learning about that and bringing it to teachers. But I think otherwise, I would say, universities have their hands full actually doing their own teaching. So I don't think it's really our role to develop those materials. I think it would be on the educators or on government or on other organizations like Rainforest Alliance did around rainforest education.
Yeah, I agree. The government, I think the Ministry of Education should play their key role, because these kids are future engineers, future business owners, future whatever. It doesn't matter in these days. Even these days is any area you can contribute to the circular economy. So yeah, I completely agree. In my research, I actually cover education as one of the 4 elements of success for the circular economy. The first one is the business case, of course. The second, infrastructure to bring materials back and forth. The education, for obvious reasons that we are discussing, but also because it influences our mindset. Because this is linked also with my next question, which is about life. We talk about circular economy, about regeneration, regenerating natural systems, introducing regenerative economy. Yet, in our business studies, life is only valuable when is dead, or our GDP gets notice of life only when it's dead. If a tree is only valuable and appears in our GDP when it's cut down and becomes timber. So how can we change that in our business education? How can we introduce life back to it and society in general? How do we value life again?
Yeah, I think this is a big challenge because for centuries we've been treating the earth like a bank that we can just take limitless deposits out of, right? And not worry if we're in deficit, operating in a deficit. And I think that is a big shift to get us out of. And I would say a lot of that, I would say Europeans are better at that than Americans for sure. And then we've exported a lot of our kind of wasteful consumption approaches. In terms of, sorry, I lost my train of thought around the original question, which was how do we tackle that?
Life.
Yeah,
back.
right. So yeah, so I think one way is to support the movement to monetize ecosystem services, right? And there's good examples of that. Costa Rica is one. We were talking about Costa Rica earlier, where they've provide ecosystem service payments to small farmers and others to protect their forests, to protect the water supplies, right? We're seeing more and more of the corporates like PepsiCo and Coca-Cola, for example, who rely very heavily on water supplies, begin to invest in water conservation projects with NGOs, local communities, and others to protect the watershed so that they have license to operate there in the future. So I do think that recognizing that we're all dependent on these natural resources, beginning to recognize that there needs to be financial returns for protecting them. Another area we're seeing on ecosystem services is like around carbon sequestration. Obviously, the carbon markets, which have some challenges, but nevertheless, I think we need to figure those out. So, for example, farmers could get reimbursed for much better both reforestation, but also soil health management practices to regenerate the natural soils and the carbon in the soils. All of those things are eminently marketable. It's just that we need to create that market. And we're also kind of seeing some interesting investment innovations in the States. So we now have this forest bond, conservation bond, where investors come in, provide funds to NGOs who put in place forest conservation management techniques that will reduce incidents of fire. And that then benefits the utility and the Forest Service. So based on the performance, the utility and the Forest Service will pay back a fraction of what they would have had to pay had there been forest fires, into the bond, right, into the investor. So it's like taking a public good and finding a way to kind of make private financing out of it. And I think we'll need more and more of that kind of innovation moving forward.
Yeah, I have mixed feelings about that approach. I was at a conference in Luxembourg last year, and I met a representative who was telling me about these investments where they buy a batch of rainforest that doesn't have anybody's claims on it. But the problem is people living in this rainforest don't know how to read and write. Of course, they don't have claims. And so this was the first step, kind of the investment, and as a later stage, they want to put it on stock exchange. So somebody who has no connection to that. So I kind of was freaking out when I heard that, because there are kind of alarm bells ringing on so many areas. So
well,
we have
we were involved with these forest carbon markets when I was running Rainforest Alliance. So like what we did is more worked with people like in the Petén in Guatemala who are living in these communities, help them actually access resources from sustainable forest management and chate, which is like a fern that they sell, sort of non-timber forest products, in addition to fees to protect the forest. Because what we saw is actually in those communities where these indigenous communities had resources from the management of the forest fire incidence was negligible compared to the quote unquote wilderness areas where nobody was there to protect them and people were moving in to do illegal deforestation and also drug running, which is a big problem through that area, right? So I think you're right in that there needs to be good focus on the economic benefits to people who live in and around those forests. And also the other thing that I saw that I was worried about is kind of the payment for that. Every single kind of organization, including my own, was lining up to get a cut, right? And so by the time it got to the final forester, community member, it's a little bit, right? So that's the other thing that, like if this turns into a robust kind of investment market, we need to make sure that what's left over at the end is sufficient. So I do think that there's a number of challenges, but I actually do think just based what I saw, like that it actually works when done well, better than just sort of setting the forest aside for theoretical wilderness protection, is an important kind of insight.
Yeah. Yes, true. We are learning. This is all new, and I see a lot of initiatives as well, and we will learn and improve along as we go. Our title is From Learning to Unlearning. What is that we have to unlearn? I have few ideas, like resources unlimited, for example, is something we have to unlearn. But what else would you suggest we have to unlearn?
Well, in business school, and I'm constantly fighting this because a lot of the professors still teach this way, we have to unlearn that this is all about short-term shareholder primacy. We definitely have to unlearn that. We have to unlearn the fact that we are thinking about maximizing returns solely for shareholders and the executives at the top, as opposed to sharing and creating more value for everybody, creating a larger pie that we can share, as opposed to like extract as much value as possible. I think, unfortunately, that's a big set of learnings. And there's been some fascinating studies about how students who got MBAs, this is both Danish and American businesses, students who got MBAs were far more likely to rent seek. In other words, take money away from more junior people in terms of salaries than those who had not an MBA and kind of worked their way up through the organization. So it just shows you what you're kind of being taught. And then I would say absolutely there's a lack of understanding around how sustainability can drive resiliency, can drive efficiencies, can drive innovation, can drive employee engagement, all those things not taught, not recognized, and that it really needs to be core to business strategy are the things we need to focus on.
Yeah, absolutely. Companies that have a great reputation attract so many applications. They can choose the best out of it. So we are looking at the lunar year. We are at the end of one lunar year, and tomorrow the new one starts, the year of the dragon. So looking ahead, what is your vision for the future? And since we are in a STARS network for leaders of the next generation, what should they do today in order to actually reach that future for all stakeholders?
Well, as members of the STARS network, you have an opportunity in your companies to really mainstream sustainability. To do that, there's a number of things you need to do. One is to work on internal education of the rest of the company. Another is to hire people coming in who've had good expertise in sustainability. So I think encouraging business schools to continue to do this work, both from student, undergraduate and graduate, but also executive education. But then I think, really ensuring that sustainability is core to business strategy, that you're defining and tracking the business case, communicating that, and doing it in a way that rather than managing to ESG reporting metrics, which is a trend that I'm seeing that I think is hugely problematic because ESG reporting metrics are process and output based. In other words, do you have a policy on X rather than what have you actually accomplished on X? That's the type of reporting metrics we see. And as see more and more compliance and more reporting, I see companies spending money on that and managing to that, which isn't going to drive either sustainability benefits or financial benefits. So that would be my other cautionary note. And I know we're at time. So.
Yes, exactly. We are over time, so that is a perfect end. I assume they can find you on LinkedIn if they want to reach out.
Absolutely, be glad to hear from them.
Awesome, thank you. Thank you so much, Tensie. This was wonderful and insightful. I wish we could continue a bit longer, but maybe some other opportunity will arise in the future. I was really looking forward to that. It was a pleasure having you. To our audience, wherever you are in the world, I wish you a very successful year of the dragon. Take care and implement sustainability. As you heard it, it's profitable.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Bye.